All right, so my name is Victor Alvarez, and we spoke about what we're trying to do with the program, Just Arts Lab, expression through the arts, and to the three different forms of arts: videography, music, and graphic designs. So, the title of my project is The Faces of Politics. So I figured, I guess somebody that was on one side of politics, fighting for, social justice, and I interview somebody else on the inside of politics, like a city councilman. So, today, this is what we're trying to do. I just wanted to ask you, tell me a little about yourself.
My name is Jamal Joseph. I am an educator, artist, and an activist, professor of film at Columbia University, founder and executive artistic director of Impact Repertory Theater, and executive artistic director of New Heritage Theater and Films. Member of the Black Panther Party. This is the 50th anniversary of the Black Panther Party, so we have stopped saying former Panthers and just saying Panthers. And I joined the Panther Party when I was 15 years old. And when I was 16, I was arrested as a case that became known as the New York Panther 21 case. Afeni Shakur, Tupac's mom, was also part of that case. And as a result of my arrest and subsequent arrests, related to my activities in the Black Panther Party, I was a political prisoner for 9.5 years.
Okay, yeah, I seen your picture too recently on, you were 16, and you're talking about the recognition that this meant like you was officially, part of the Panther Party. Another thing I wanted to ask you is like, how do you feel about, Ronald Reagan, like, implementing gun control laws after the Panther Party armed themselves?
Well, the Panther got national recognition for policing the police. And if you look at the Black Panther 10-point program, it talks about housing, education, healthcare. But one of the primary points that the Panthers addressed 50 years ago was police brutality. Point number 7 of the Black Panther 10-point program says we want an immediate end to police brutality and the murder of black people. And in Oakland, California, and other cities where it was legal to carry guns, to open carry as they say now, Panthers would police the police. They would follow their cars, or they'd get a call that the police were on the scene. The Panthers would step out with rifles and shotguns and law books, and they would read the person being arrested or being harassed their rights. They would also advise the police that they had a constitutional right to observe what was going on, a constitutional right to bear arms. And this lowered the number of police shootings and police brutality dramatically. Well, California responded. Ronald Reagan was the governor at the time, by saying, look, when we said the citizens could carry guns, we didn't mean Black Panthers with berets and law books. So they proceeded to change the laws, and the Panthers protested by storming the state capital of Sacramento to protest that. The laws eventually got changed, and what happened is that, when it was, the laws work in terms of gun control when it comes to disarming black folks. And Panthers talked about self-defense, arming themselves for the purpose of self-defense. And so black communities were disarmed. Panthers could not patrol in the same way. I won't say that we were disarmed, but we didn't have patrols in the same way. But we made a statement. We made a statement about police brutality. We made a statement about how people have to organize against it. And today, point number 7 of the Black Panther program still exists. When we say we want an immediate end to police brutality and the murder of black people. The founder of the Black Panther Party, Bobby Seale, said years ago that if he was organizing the Panther Party again then, and this is about 15, 20 years ago, Panthers would still be patrolling the streets, but they'd be carrying video cameras and laptop computers. The guns and the shotguns were dynamic weapons of social change at that time. Bobby Seale saw into the future and realized that laptops and video cameras, now which is all in your cell phone, can be a weapon of social change. And we've seen that. We've seen Black Lives Matter and local activists use these cell phone videos in a way to activate people. It was no surprise to us. anyone who lives in a black or brown community knows how the police behave, knows how they treat folks in our community, knows that they like to punch first, kick first, shoot first, and ask questions later. But the fact that you can capture it and, as the sister in Minnesota, upload it as a live stream really shines a light on it, and it's caught national attention. So it's really important to still be armed for the purpose of self-defense. But in 2016, 50 years after the founding of the Black Panther Party, you've got to modify the weapons to the times.
Okay, definitely. Okay, another question I have is, how has not empowering the youth played a role in the violence in our communities?
Not empowering our youth creates a situation, and by not empowering, we have to define what that means. In Harlem, where we're doing the interview, Bronx, Brooklyn, most of the people who go to prison in New York State come from 5 zip codes. And there's no secret where those zip codes are, right? Harlem, Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens. A young black or brown boy in this community has a 1 in 8 chance of graduating high school and going to college, but a 1 in 3 guarantee that they're going to go to prison. When you create conditions where schools are prisons before you even start, where there's miseducation, where there are ovens with fluorescent lights, and teachers that are more interested in control and containment than education, where they're walking through metal detectors, where they're living in impoverished neighborhoods, going to school hungry, seeing no hope, seeing themselves marginalized, seeing themselves portrayed and criminalized, then you're creating a ticking time bomb of oppression. This rage is turned inward when this frustration has no outlet, when there's no hope, and when drugs and alcohol are poured into the community and guns are poured into the community. So it's amazing how many guns can wind up in a black community, that are there, and that leads to the situation again where you're throwing a match, on wood that's been soaked with gasoline, that's been soaked with oppression, with fear, and with anger. So that neglect bubbles out, but that doesn't, by the time a young brother gets shot, that bullet's been coming his whole life. And it's not just the hand of the other kid, on the other side, the other black or brown kid. America has that finger on the trigger, and America loaded that gun.
Okay, definitely. Another question is, what historical connections can you make between your time and ours when it comes to the violence in our communities?
The connection I can make between my time and now with violence in the communities is that the same frustrations existed. There were riots, there were gang fights, there was all kinds of frustration. The difference became the movement. And the difference was when you had movements like the Young Lords and the Black Panther Party that was birthed in the inner cities, that was there on the street where you could see them every day. And all respect and praise to the brothers and sisters in Black Lives Matter. But we see Black Lives Matter in action, brave action, when there's a police shooting, protesting. But in between these shootings and in between the acts of oppression, you need a movement that people can see and touch and embrace every day. You need a movement that puts people to work at once and expands the work beyond just protesting and social media to working in the community. Panthers had to show up every day and go to the breakfast program. And then they had to work with people who were about to be evicted. There was health clinics. They were at the welfare centers. They were in the schools. There was a liberation school. And so you worked and you knew that you were a revolution every day because you were doing revolutionary work. And more importantly, the people in the community knew who you were. And so a lot of people were able to come in before the situation exploded in their communities and in their lives and walk into a Panther office or a Young office and be put to work, relieve that frustration. The Young Lords was the biggest street gang in Chicago, Puerto Rican street gang. Fred Hampton, who was head of the Chicago Black Panther Party, politicized those brothers and sisters, and they became the Young Lords organization, and finally the Young Lords Party. So you can turn gang members into revolutionaries. Malcolm X was a thug and a prisoner, you know, politically correct, we would say an incarcerated person. He was a convict, and he educated himself and became one of our greatest liberation thought leaders and revolutionary leaders. And so all of that is waiting to happen, but we've got to be on the ground with our young people with a movement that they can embrace and participate at once.
Definitely. I agree. What's the role of violence in social change?
You know, H. Rap Brown, Brother Jamal, once said that violence is as American as apple pie. And Malcolm X talked about violence for the purpose of self-defense. He always said that, you know, when the white government wanted to send you to war, you bled. But when it comes to our babies being killed and being blown up in churches in Alabama, we ain't got no blood. I think for the purpose of self-defense, we have to be willing to stand up and defend. I do think that it is a dangerous path to directly confront the police or the military, because they do have a license to kill, and their weaponry and technology and their training is just to murder us. So I think that we have to stand up, stand strong, understand that there's no power like the power of people and power of numbers and power of exposing them, and fight the physical violence with revolutionary force and aggression.
Okay, definitely. And I think this will be the last question. What do you think can solve our issues of violence in our community?
What I think can help solve the issues of violence in our community is food, clothing, shelter, education, and love. It seems simple to rattle off, but it seems so hard to solve. It's a shame that in the richest nation of the world, while the 1% is getting richer and richer, that our young people continue to have, and I'm talking about in our black and brown communities, the highest levels of unemployment, the highest levels of incarceration, the highest level of teen illnesses. You know, our young women have the highest level of being infected by the HIV virus, and that we can't figure out a way to, you know, as America likes to go overseas and invade other countries, we can't figure out a way how to invade our own poor neighborhoods with relief, with food, with clothing, with shelter, with jobs, with something to productively engage. When people are treated like animals, caged like animals, put them together, there was an experiment done years ago related to public housing. And they put lab rats in a cage, and they stacked the rats tightly together, crowded in the cages, and they stacked them high and close together the way projects are built. And what this experiment revealed was that no matter how clean the rats were kept, no matter how much food and water they were given, they became aggressive and began to attack each other. We're dealing with communities that are designed and treated like concentration camps. We've got to tear down the walls from within and from without. And we have to replace this oppression and neglect with food, clothing, shelter, education, and opportunity. And as we scream to the government that Black lives matter and brown lives matter, we also have to get our young people to understand by our direct intervention in their poverty and our suffering that their lives matter. They need to wake up in the morning, look in the mirror as a young black and brown man, girl, boy, woman, child, and say, my life matters.
Thank you, man. I appreciate your time, you know, on a hot day like this, to come and, you know, contribute, you know, some of your wisdom, you know, to our young people that are going to be listening and other people that's going to be watching us.
Thank you, brother. It's my pleasure. Great interview.
Thank
and great success with this project.
All right, thanks.